Hello, everyone. My name is Joe, aka Joe The Wellness Curator, and this is the Obsidian Mindset Podcast, where we are redefining what wellness means to you. This is BTG 004, strategies for saving your coins and your energy. Like you guys know, BTG is behind the gym, and this is where I talk about things that was either on my mind from the last episode, during, after, and we can just talk about it freely. So for me, what came out of last episode, we were talking a lot about the mindset, but there are some strategies, when it comes to money and finances. And someone asked me what are a couple strategies that I go by or that I learned over the last couple of years. And two of my favorite strategies, both deal with a little bit about mindset, but the first strategy came from me reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by, I believe his name is Robert Kiyosaki. I'll link the book if I can. And, the book is a really good book about just thinking about finances differently. I read it last year in the beginning of the pandemic, and it really made me realize that although I work in the finance industry, there's a lot I did not know about myself in terms of how I dealt with finances and just some of the approaches that I could be taking to be more intentional about my money. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from there was something that I now call or he called, I believe, but just paying yourself first, right? There are so many bills that are due. There are so many expectations for money, especially if you're like the quote unquote breadwinner, or you are financially responsible for other people or children or, whatever. One thing that I really decided that I was going to do was keep a separate savings account called Pay Me First. And every paycheck, every income that I get, I am very intentional about paying myself first. And that might mean a percentage of the paycheck. It might mean just $50, $100, whatever piece of it. But before I start dishing out that money, before I start shifting the money to different savings accounts and paying bills, I always make sure that I pay myself first. And I think if for a while, it took me some time to get used to it, because I'm very used to, okay, I need to pay these bills. I need to get it as low as possible. But the fact of the same way that I needed to make sure that people are getting paid, I need to make sure I'm getting paid, right? And, the money's accruing. It's really cool to see it increase. One thing I had to make sure I wasn't doing was dipping into it to spend on credit cards and to spend on random bills. And it really was a way of also just being very intentional of saying, okay, you deserve these coins and you should put yourself first. So I make it very intentional that before I start dishing out all those coins, I start to I pay myself first. And it's literally as it sounds. And, what am I going to do with this? I haven't decided yet. I think that I will probably use it on things that I think are for me and things that I probably wouldn't buy or spend much on. So I usually will think, okay, this will probably be my travel account, or anything else that I feel like is quote unquote frivolous or things that I probably would not be spending on. So I think that was a really good strategy. And I think the big point that he mentioned as well is there are ways to renegotiate with your creditors, right? There are ways to say, okay, I'm not going to pay you this week or this month. Can we talk about renegotiating how to pay you? Because, at the end of the day, they want their coins too. So they're usually, I think a lot of the times we are very fixed on I have to pay this person now because it's due, versus having the conversation of I don't know if I can pay you at this time. Let's have a conversation about renegotiating the date. And you can, even if it's a big corporation or a credit card company, you can still have that conversation. So don't be scared to renegotiate. If you don't think you have it, or you don't think that you want to spend all that money at that time on that thing. So definitely look into that. Second strategy that was really big for me, and it was really after talking to two of my friends, Alex and Kiana, they really put fire under me to create an emergency fund. Now, the emergency fund is very interesting because it is a fund that you're creating, a nest egg for in case of emergencies, like a rainy day, something happens, right? And for a while I was just like, whatever. I'll just, if something happens, I'll have my credit cards, I have people around me, and that's fine. But over the years, I realized, okay, that's very risky. As an accountant, I'm risk averse, and that's very risky to have. And you never know when something's going to happen, right? And to be honest, last year I was involved in an accident, car accident, and I'm fine. Very, very blessed to say that I'm fine, and everyone involved was fine. But the fact that I had an emergency fund there ready, that's very what was funded, fully not fully funded, but funded. I was very comfortable with like I had the resources to make sure everything was okay, right? And when you are in these situations that are, something happened to your house, something happened to your car, something happened to someone it besides the emotional toll of whatever's happening, you don't want the financial toll to also impact what's happening, right? Because that's also a lot of stress, right? You don't want to think about, oh, this thing happened to my house, plus I don't have the cash to fix it, right? So now I'm starting to be very intentional. Like I'll also put a portion of my money before I even spend it on bills as well to a fund for emergencies. Once again, it's really hard to do sometimes, at least for me, because it's like, okay, I see this cash and I'm not supposed to touch it. And traditionally, I believe the rule of thumb is it should be at least 3 to 4, if not more, like maybe 3 to 6 months of expenses. So this is where it's key that you should kind of know how much you're spending in expenses every month. So therefore, you can kind of figure out how much you want that emergency fund to be. Now, I know like I said, it's a hard process. It's hard to see that the money's there and you're not doing anything with it, but it is you're able to sleep at night knowing that if something happens, you have the funds to take care of it. And it's not just for me. I don't use the emergency fund just for if emergencies happen to me, right? Like I've had some unfortunate situations this last year with people either passing or they needed assistance. And, in those situations, I might use that emergency fund to assist with that, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's an emergency for me, but that's just the way I interpret emergency funds. So those are the two tips that I have. It really helps, and it really has made me more intentional about how I spend my money and how I think about not just spending it all and not just giving it to the creditors, but also being very strategic of like, okay, this is for me, this is for emergencies, and this is how I can make sure that I'm always on top of it for the most part. Now, what does that mean for outside of finances? So I talked about pay me first and I talked about emergency fund, but honestly, those two accounts, quote unquote accounts, or those two systems also going to work for your energy. And just be with me for a second. Be with me for a second. So, there are all times where we have that burst of energy, right? We're like, that energy's here. You're like, okay, let me do something. And for me, a lot of the time, my first jump or my first intuition is to do something that I probably don't want to do. So it's like, okay, let me go do that report I have to do for work, or let me go do, something that I've been pushing off, but now that I have the energy, I'll go do it now. But I do think that similar to the money, where I say pay me first, you should be using that energy to do something for you first, right? And that's always where I'm very intentional. Like, okay, I have this energy. What do I want to do for me? Now, if that means working out, or if that means spending that time with someone that's special, if that means hanging around with your dog or cat, like whatever that means to you, just making sure you're always putting that energy towards you first, right? Because like I've been saying in a few of the other episodes, you always want to use your energy from your saucer and not your cup. You want to make sure you're also making sure that you're using that extra energy on something for you as well, instead of always pushing out on everyone else, right? You don't want to always be using your energies for other people, because when it's time for you to do self-care, when it's time for you to do anything yourself, you're going to feel drained, right? There's nothing worse than, finishing the day and being so depleted. And that's when you have to get things done for yourself and you don't have the energy, you don't have the time, and you're just like, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow. And you deserve better. You deserve more. You deserve to put into yourself. And that kind of goes for emergency fund too. And it's a weird way of like, I like to think of my energy as like a cup, right? And sometimes or at least me, I was like, if I'm entering a conversation, if I'm entering a task that I know is going to drain my energy, right? I always try to make sure I keep a little bit at the end right? Just for me to get through, or to get through the day or whatever, because there's, like I said, there's nothing worse than being completely drained and not being able to take care of other things, or being completely drained and not being able to take care of you, or being completely drained or being able to take care of, let's say, people that are close to you, or, whatever that means. So it's about keeping that little extra stash, being very cognizant of, like, okay, how am I feeling? And you know what this involves checking in a lot. So for me, I know even during the day when I'm at work, I just try to do a mental check of, like, how am I feeling in terms of my energy? Am I depleted? Is this task taking too much? Is this like, and how do I recuperate? So for me, during the day, I might just go for a walk. That might be my way of getting a little bit more energy, getting a little pick me up to get through the rest, or to get to tasks that I need to do. So I think it's really about taking time to figure out what your energy needs, what you need, and two, you have enough energy to get through the day. You have enough energy to just be able to exist and not feel drained at the end. Because you deserve more. Like I said, you deserve more. You deserve better. You have one body. You have one mind. You're here. You're present. So let's be very intentional with that. Be intentional with your coins and be intentional with your energy. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, I appreciate you guys. Feel free to rate and share. And you know where to reach me. You can email me at joe@definedbyobsidian.com, or feel free to follow me on IG, either my personal, Joe The Wellness Curator, or at Obsidian Mindset. Thank you so much again, and thank you for picking you today.